Right, so on the BSA, I think I'm homing in on a practical solution for the electrics. This power box is working well, and or at least I've got one issue with it, which I'll explain in a minute. But yeah, it's fine. It's not properly mounted on this say 2mm plate that I made up that is actually comes down here and covers the full depth of the power box mounting. So that's very solid and very good. Got the new coil, which is working well. New HT lead, which is fine. New spark plug, which is fine. So on this side, we've got the Boyer Mark IV ignition, which again is fine. Fuse box because I've got a battery in, or at least some of the time, and I've been using this NiCad pack, 12-volt NiCad pack, as the battery for starting purposes only. So start it up with the battery connected via this switch, which is just temporarily bodged onto the back here. And that puts power into the system and gives you a good spark to start the bike. Down here is the standard ignition switch, which is as Boyer recommend. So that's all fine. The issue I had, which was kind of curious, it took me a while to work out, I found that with this switch fitted, which is an illuminated switch, this earth wire goes to the other side. And the idea I had was that when this is off, it's off, but when it's on, I get this switch lights up. So I have an indication that it's the voltage is coming from the battery. But that turned out to be an issue in that once I got the bike started with the battery on, if I disconnected the battery, it just immediately cuts out. When I thought there was a fault somewhere else, but I eventually realized it was this switch causing the problem. So for some reason that I haven't quite got to the bottom of yet, this switch with its little bulb illumination was in some way kind of shorting out the supply to the ignition. Having pulled this wire off, which disables the light, and just had a simple switch as in and out to the battery connection here, everything's fine. You can turn the battery on to start, disconnect it once it's started, and the bike runs fine. So there's something about having a short circuit through the bulb filament that just trips out the either the power box or the ignition box, or both, but it certainly doesn't like it. So I'm going to replace this switch. I'm going to make a new bracket for this. This is just a thin piece that I made some months ago now. I'm going to make a thicker piece out of 2mm stainless. I'm going to extend it down here so that this box is properly mounted rather than just hanging off one screw. I also have it so it extends down here so the ignition is properly mounted, and again not hanging off a bit of sticky tape and zip ties. And I'm also going to extend it further down, I think, to let this cute little battery sit on the same bracket. So I'm going to, rather than using the NiCad pack, I found this little sealed 12-volt lead acid battery, which I think is a better option. And I could, in principle, leave it connected permanently, but in practice, I think I'll still have it switched so I can isolate it if I leave the bike for any length of time, apart from anything else. And I'll use a proper switch for isolation, not this illuminated type. I'll just have a plain switch, hopefully mounted on this same bracket somehow, but still accessible as a sort of secret switch around behind the side panel. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but I'll make a cardboard template, see what I can come up with. And this is the Boyer diagram for positive earth, and the power box that I've got, the one with the delayed lighting lead and the ignition system. So it's wired up exactly as it's shown here. There's the lights up here, so the power box getting its AC from the alternator, it's feeding across to the ignition box, which has got its stator plate on the end of the camshaft, and in my case just one coil. The battery down here, which is shown as optional, again I've got mine in exactly this position with a fuse. I've also got the isolation switch, which is effectively in here between the battery and the fuse. So I won't use an illuminated one, but I will still keep an isolation switch in there. And the ignition switch is up here, which is the one with a key on my side panel. So I'm following the standard Boyer recommended wiring, just with the addition of this isolation switch. The other thing I did as part of the experimentation really was fit this voltmeter. So this is just a cheap 12 volt rated voltmeter. So it just connected straight across the battery. So it just shows me how much voltage is being applied to the battery when the bike's running, just to make sure it's not overcharging, and to check whether a lead acid battery is going to be okay, which of course it is, because that's what the power box is designed for. But more particularly at the time, I was worried about the NiCad batteries, but it seems to run at about 14 volts maximum, maybe a bit 14 and a half. So yeah, that's going to be fine, I think. Okay, so I've got a cardboard template. So the plan is that this hangs from the original mounts on the frame, and the fuse box will be here, ignition here, and this battery will just sit in this little rest. We'll work out a way of strapping it on, probably just with an elastic band or something or equivalent. The switch for the battery isolation can go on this little tab. So transferring that onto the metal, so this 2mm stainless, a bit messy, but if I just cut it out around here, fold this up for the battery, which will be here, fuse box here, Boyer ignition sits on that little rectangle, and this can just kick up, drill a hole in it for the switch, and these are the pickup points for the frame. So I'll cut that out and fold it and see how we fit. So roughly cut out with the angle grinder. I'll finish off the edges and some of these curves using the grinding wheel. Of course, this is going to be massively heavy compared to what it could be, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm not going to be competing in anything serious, so I'd rather have it just solid and reliable rather than lightweight. Okay, so this plate is all cut out now and bent into shape. Just see how it fits. Right, so this fuse box thingy, I need to sort that wire out, but that should fit there. The Boyer should fit up. Again, I need to sort the wiring out. Boyer should fit up there. And the little battery should just rest on there. So it's pretty good. I'll put a bit of foam between the battery and the steel, and I say it'll strap round, I think will be the easiest thing. And meanwhile, there's this bent bit here that will take the switch, so I should be able to reach in and isolate the battery, like a hidden switch to sort of anti-theft to some extent at least. Okay, so everything's bolted up. Fuse box is attached properly. Just going to try and attach this. I'm going to use one of these 3M VHB very high bond strength stickers. I'll stick that on there. I think that'll be enough to hold it. I might put a zip tie around as well just for added security. But I've rubbed it down with alcohol, so let's give that a go. This is a 2.1, sorry, no, it's 2.3 thick foam. Most of them seem to be 1.1 mil which is a bit thin really. It doesn't give you the same um, flexibility, doesn't adapt to an uneven surface as well, I have found. Right. Right, so all finished. The little battery is sat on its bracket. I've managed to attach it just with a bit of old inner tube as a elastic band to hold it in place. It's got a bit of neoprene closed cell foam as well to isolate it from the steel. Yeah, so everything's wired up. The ignition is back on. This new switch is in and on its little spur off the bracket that I made. So the battery can be completely disconnected and charged if necessary. This switch just connects it into the bike's system, and indeed, if I turn it on, it turns on the voltmeter up here, just to give me some feedback on what's going on. So it does run now without the battery, so I can just turn it off once it's started, but at least I get a good spark as it's kicked over from rest. One thing to note, by the way, is that turning on the switch brings on the voltmeter, voila, but it doesn't bring on the lights because I've got the version of the power box that only enables the lighting circuits once the volts has risen above a certain amount. I forget what the threshold is now, but it's it lets you start it without the load of the lights on and only turns them on once it's started and the volts have risen. Right, so next thing is to give it a go. Make sure everything's okay. I think it should be the final iteration, but we'll see. I'm bound to be wrong. Anyway, thanks for watching.